Welcome to your readings for the week of the March 31st to April 6th. Mercury retrograde starts this week. Full Aries Mercury retrograde. We don't have any Rams on the list, which is unfortunate. We need to get us some. But it is going to affect everybody, of course, as it always does. I've already seen the little phone glitches. Actually, this office phone for the studio has just been on a 20-minute to 4-hour delay on sending messages through and stuff like that pretty much all day today. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. It's already begun. It's a full Aries Mercury retrograde, so that does indicate more aggressive communication patterns, specifically bringing up aggressive communication patterns that just, they're annoying. And then something is just like, it frustrates me, but I get over it. And then it gets to a point where you can't ignore it anymore. And you just, you know, kind of. So maybe a little bit of that playing into things, but let's go ahead and get to it. Get into our readings. We're going to start with Darcy. And I just ate. I shouldn't. Well, really should have checked my face before I got on here. It looks like I got lipstick all over me, but I don't. Okay. Jupiter and Uranus continuing to be in Taurus. What's interesting about where we kind of move into this week is there's really not a whole lot of issues. Okay, Jupiter and Uranus are there. They're in very close conjunction with each other. Jupiter is actually going to be on its way out here in the next month or so. We're getting closer to that. Both of them in a sextile with Mars and Saturn, which are focused on long-term goals. So aside, there really are no challenges. The two planets are not lining up in any challenges per se, except for Thursday when the moon moves square, with them causing a little bit of, a money issue there. But for the most part, everything is just kind of, let's just move forward. Let's just keep moving. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep moving forward. Interestingly enough, in your situation that you're dealing with right now in terms of work, Jupiter and Uranus are really focused on those that support you. And, this kind of makes me chuckle thinking about your roommate who's like, I don't like crabby Darcy, quit that job. And, I think in a sense, because you're a very responsible Darcy, and with these planets in a sextile with Saturn, which is the planet of responsibility, you need something like that to kind of get you to, to either leave or do something else or what have you, because, you can just deal with things because whether you like them or not, because that's just what you have to do, right? You still live by that old school code of ethics, and that is that if I don't want to starve to death, I gotta work, you know? But we both know that sort of old school code of ethics also comes with a we work ourselves to death no matter what kind of a mentality. So I think it's good that you're keeping your options open. There's definitely a lot of energy moving towards that, and not a whole lot to obstacle it, if that makes sense. Not a whole lot that's getting in the way of it. It's just, it is as annoying as it is and frustrating that you haven't quite got there. Let me put it to you in these terms. Okay. I've seen a lot of people who, go to interview to interview to interview to interview that just stay where you were for a long time, where, you keep calling people, but nothing is happening. You did the insurance thing and was like, okay, this is weird. I don't like to do it. Okay. And then you got Loves called you back and you're like, okay, great. I have something. Wait, no, this is weird. And I don't want to do that. So it's slowly moving in that direction. I think the retrograde might be one of those really positive influences on this for you, because Mercury retrogrades do put an end to situations, unpleasant situations, difficult situations. And in Aries, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the baby. It's all about new everything. So, with that being said, I don't think it's going to take you very long to get through this situation. And we've got the Ace of Wands. This is Aries right here. It's new beginnings, it's the fire element, it's birth of new ideas, it's don't despair. Everything is going to change literally within the next 2 weeks. That's what I'm being told, basically. So the challenges are, I mean, again, challenges always pop up, but the big challenges I really feel right now are over. So use this time wisely. That's what I have for you, Darcy. Moving on to Kendra, Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus still. Of course, focused on your support system, those that support you, growing that support system. Jupiter is on his way out of Taurus, not like tomorrow, okay, or even next week, really. But Jupiter is on his way out of Taurus and will not be back for another 12 years, right? So, and there is no more retrogrades in terms of Jupiter's influence on Taurus, from now until he leaves. So, really harnessing that growth energy is a really good idea, because you've got maybe 2 more months, and then his influence is no longer. And they both planets have really moved into positions where they're not really moving into challenges with other planets. So it's almost like all the doors are open for you to find the support, if that makes sense. And one of the things actually that popped in my head earlier before I even started recording was that the support doesn't just come from your family. I'm seeing it in your job, and not necessarily in a way where you're hooking up with people to support you with your projects, but like the Amazon job, all of a sudden you have these people, these opportunities that sort of show up to give you support, so that it's just not quite so hectic and chaotic all the time, if that makes sense. Like, I really feel that smoothing out in some way, and maybe not like completely as in forever, but it's almost like for now somebody has come in to lend a hand. I can't really explain it. Both planets are in a sextile with Mars and Saturn throughout the week. Here's one little itty bitty challenge: is the moon moves into Aquarius about Thursday, and those two planets move into a square with the moon for like a handful of hours. And this is almost like a small temporary money argument that can just, and of course, Mercury is retrograde by this point. I feel two things here. One, you can fuel the fire or put it out. In that moment, you get to choose which way you're going to go. And I really feel that, this is more of like a sudden panic, and not necessarily an end of the world kind of thing. That makes sense. So it how long that lasts really depends on what you put into it. Um, but that's it. And it's like I said, it's literally for a few hours, and then it kind of goes away. In terms of the sextile with Saturn and Mars, both of these planets are really focused on your long-term goals. Mars influence going into those long-term goals, because Mars is like a tremendous amount of energy. So, and really looking at these goals as your responsibility, to yourself, to your finances, to your family, everything. So I feel like, last week, I know that the week started out very difficult with, with the kid being sick, you not feeling good and being that hermit and all that stuff, which is great. This week I feel is nose to the grind, and that's how I see you, is your nose is to the grind, and you just have this tremendous oomph of energy going into creating. Specifically, creating is like a big, 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 big deal this week. I'm going to pull your card here. See what we get. The Six of Swords in reverse. Let us never despair, because we know sometimes the reverse is not necessarily the bad one. The Six of Swords in reverse indicates impaired judgment and logic and the potential to repeat past mistakes. So to me, the Six of Swords in this position is kind of like a reminder, when a situation comes up and your natural reaction is to panic, is to hide, is to internalize, is to one of those things, like the moon coming in for that few hours, right? This is basically just a reminder. You don't have to repeat past mistakes. You can approach it differently, and the results will be very, very different, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Jeannette. So a couple things. First of all, we have no planets in Gemini this week. Mercury is going retrograde on Tuesday in Aries. It's a full Aries Mercury retrograde. What does that mean exactly? Well, it's volatile tempers, really, is what it is. It can be a lot of aggressive communication, anger over miscommunication. Usually it's a big explosion and then it kind of goes away. And sometimes when you have an emotional situation that's just been slowly simmering and boiling more and more and more and more and more, you get to the point where it boils over, right? And that's really what an Aries and Mercury retrograde is forcing that boil over in order to get rid of some of that excess water. And, because there just isn't any room for it anymore. We do have Vespa moving out of Gemini this week, but it's still on the cusp, technically, by the end of the week. It's 1 degree Cancer, which means you can still kind of feel the effects of it, even at 1 degree Cancer. More so, I think, in the beginning of the week. And focus continues to be on deep triggers and trauma roots and different things like that. It kind of feels like, okay, we can move on now because we've been here for like way too long. And I feel like part of that has to do with Vespa in bringing that influence into it, maybe a lot sooner than it needed to be. And that's kind of frustrating. There's 2 things that come up for you this week. The first thing is, I keep getting same old BS. Basically, it's like a situation that um oh great, not this again. It's kind of one of those situations where you thought you weren't going to have this argument again, and then boom, here you go, having this argument again with this person. Don't necessarily see Mario around this either. It's more of a female energy than a masculine one. It actually could even come from a couple of different places. Part of this, I feel, comes from okay, we're just not going to go in that direction because I just went and like I don't know, it fell in a hole and now it's not even there. Oh, okay. I go back and forth between your mother and your youngest daughter, and I think part of it is for a typical Aries, Mercury retrograde, we slip into patterns with people, the way we deal with them, the way we talk to them, the way we approach them, and the way we react to them. And I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where it really just kind of blows up because you can't keep having the same conversation and you can't keep waiting for somebody else to change the way that they're communicating because you need to be the one to spearhead that, if that makes sense. The other thing is, I keep seeing the color green around you, and usually I interpret green to mean healing. So I'm not sure if you are recovering from something or there's some sort of something going on there. Um, I am not saying that you're not taking care of your health, but there is something. I know last time we talked, there was something that was going on. Maybe it's a one thing after another thing. It's almost like I don't necessarily see you ignoring it, but maybe it's one of those things where you feel that something is off and you have to keep pushing for them to check. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but you have to keep pushing for them to check because you know something's off, but the doctors are like, no, that's just normal, that's fine. You just got to keep, don't let them do that to you, just keep pushing for them to check, I guess, if that makes sense. Very confusing. And this is like a teal green, which I want to say is spirit healing also. So it's not just a physical, but it's an emotional healing. It's a mental healing. It's a really good idea to, if you can, take like a yoga class or something like that. More mindful and meditation than movement for now. Five of Cups is the card that actually, this is totally the blue I was picking up on. That's kind of awesome. The Five of Cups in this position indicates hope for the future, learn valuable lessons from past experiences, and also indicates spiritual growth as well. Okay, well, I mean, that's obviously a really good card for us to land on. Sort of get the sense that you and your mom are learning to communicate in a different way. And I think that that has a lot to do with what's going on. It's just a reminder, remember, you're learning to communicate in a different way because it's very easy to fall back into old patterns. That makes sense. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Connie. We are, first of all, there's no planets in Leo. God, I forgot what sign we were on. There's no planets in Leo this week, which is good. That's the good news. The not so great news is Mercury goes retrograde this week on Tuesday. In Aries. So all of our Mercury retrogrades are in fire signs this year, which means the next one is in Leo, but we're not there yet. The good thing is there's no planets in Leo to possibly interact with this Mercury retrograde, although I don't think it would really interact with it in a bad way, considering more a good way, I think, than a bad. But Mercury retrogrades affect all of us. So two things: extra patience, extra time, extra everything is always good. With fire sign Mercury retrogrades and Aries specifically, it does tends to amplify aggressive communication. So you can, try and avoid talking to people for the next 4 weeks, but nobody can professionally do that, right? To me, I take a little extra time to respond to something that triggers me during any Mercury retrograde, but the fire sign one specifically, because it almost feels in some cases like people are trying to pick a fight on purpose. And well, it's a very easy trap to fall into. The other thing is that focus is moved solely on the past. And what I'm concerned with is when focus tends to be on the past, it escalates many times the amount of time that you tend to spend time focused on and harping on things that happened before. And so, unfortunately, having been in that accident, it puts you back at home kind of going through that, if that makes sense. So it's very important to be aware of that as much as you possibly can. Try and, do what you do, put a little extra, oh, excuse me, a little extra brakes on it, um, if you can. Focus on the past also. There's a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda in there, I think. And we're not just talking about, what's happened with your parents, but also there's an element of, when you sit down and you sit down with a client and then you leave the client, then you go over it. I should have done this, I should have done that, blah, 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 blah. It's like doing the work twice. And while you can get something constructive out of it to a certain extent, too much is just beating yourself up, and it pulls you down. It just pulls you down. So you want to try and avoid that as much as possible. I feel like focusing on it this week helps you to really get a good idea of how much you do it, because the more you're aware of how much you do it, the easier it is for you to stop doing it. And it's not easy, as in like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. You just sort of focus on something else. When it comes back and creeps up again, you refocus on something else, and you just keep on doing that. Okay, the card that I'm picking up for you is the Hermit. um Not that I don't see you taking any clients or anything, but I still see it as being very minimal. Mainly because you have other things that need to, other appointments, doctors and stuff like that, still going through the motions of things. But also because there just doesn't seem to be a lot. But I also see at the end of the week that changing a little bit. So I'm not sure if this is just because most of your appointments are most of them are popping up at the end of the week. At the beginning of the week, it doesn't look very much, but then at the end of the week, you get a couple of surprises, if that makes sense. Good surprises. Thing about the hermit is the hermit doesn't just hide in a cave and not speak to people. The hermit is about utilizing that space and that time for improvement in some way. So using empty time wisely. Everything does kind of happen for a reason. Maybe that's the reason why this happened. So that's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Jenny, no planets in Leo. Focus is on the past. Can't see how you would have a whole lot of time for that right now, but also it's an interesting thing, I think, that the brain does when it's overworked and overwhelmed and you're in a position where you're stressed, that when you're not focused and working and all that kind of stuff, your mind just veers to something that's more comfortable to focus on. And I kind of feel that happening a lot more recently, I think, than maybe you would think it would have been before, if that makes any sense. Or maybe you're noticing that that's happening more often than maybe it used to. And I don't really think that it's because you're dissatisfied with your life and the way it is right now. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that there's a lot of elements as we get older that we don't like. And the more elements we come across that we're not really comfortable with about ourselves now, the more we kind of look back to what we had before. So I don't see it necessarily as you're pining for anything. I don't see it anything as you're escaping anything. It's just more like it's a way for your brain to just go without having to work, because your brain is working a lot lately. By the way, you are effing awesome and I love you so much. Thank you so much. I was just going to be happy to break even. To have money left over to break even is just like, oh, I love you. Thank you so much. That was such a gift. Not, I know that, you obviously you didn't do anything magical to make that happen, but it's all still because of you. And so I'm just going to give you all the credit. The other thing is, I kind of feel like part of the looking back to the past has to do with revisiting places. It's almost like for future plans, if that makes sense. Like you're making future plans to revisit places you've been before. And of course you would be focused on that because you are count them, 2 weeks away from the deadline as of this week. In fact, technically, as we get into this week, it's not quite the following week. Actually, I think it is 2 weeks. Yes, I think it is 2 weeks. So I can see where you're getting really stressed out, but really excited at the same time because you're almost there. Now, here is the scary part, and that is that Mercury's retrograde starts this week. And I'm sure that to be in a Mercury retrograde in Aries, no less, in another fire sign, the last 2 weeks of tax season is probably a terrifying thing to think about. I'm just a little bit terrified about it, for you and me to a certain extent, because it's not just the preparers, it's everybody else. It's like it's going to amplify this I'm not ready panic crap that people go to when they wait to the last minute to get this shit done, right? So I really feel that it's going to put a bit of a nasty edge on these last couple of weeks. Maybe even a little bit more aggressive communication specifically towards you guys and what you're doing, and all of the when you have to tell people that this is how it is and there's nothing you can do about it, and they get mad at you anyway. Probably a little bit more of that, unfortunately. But um I also see, because Aries is such a childlike influence, it's like you counterbalance that craziness with being immature and fun with the kids, if that makes any sense at all. Or just being immature and having fun with the girls, with your girlfriends, whatever. Because you can. Hey, Three of Pentacles. It's all about money for you. Of course it is, right? Do you ever get to the point where you just hate money? I mean, seriously. Three of Pentacles in this position indicates advancement in career and success for Jenny. I wouldn't expect anything less. And I do keep seeing you advancing and advancing and advancing. So, yeah, there you have it. That's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Linda, focus is on, well, a couple of different things. It's still on the home. There's no planets in Virgo. Focus is still on the home. Juno is focused on the mind and how the mind works and how your thoughts project your actions, or how your thoughts influence your actions. Juno is retrograde. So while Juno is all about how you relate to others, retrograde is really a lone journey, if that makes sense. And part of what I feel is coming up for you around this is having some time. Wow. Having some time to really check in with yourself. Not, I think part of the problem with being busy all the time is you never really get a chance to check in with yourself. You know what you want on the surface because it's the thing that drives you all the time. It's that energy that drives you to be busy all the time. But sometimes that energy to drive you to be busy all the time is actually compensating or covering up something that maybe you need to really um focus on for yourself. That could be a physical health thing, that could be a mental health thing, could be an emotional health thing. We're all always running away from something. Some of us run more than others, but I don't think there's a single one of us that doesn't run a little bit, even if it's just a little bit. So I kind of feel like, for one, this week is a good chance to set aside a chunk of time specifically for that. A check-in with Linda, a check-in with your counsel to see where to go from here. Not because you shouldn't hate, spend time with other people, but because you need to make sure that you spend that same amount of time focused on yourself also. The other thing, and I think we are talking tomorrow, actually. It just occurs to me all of a sudden. I think we are talking tomorrow. The other thing is, I actually am seeing things sort of calming down into something normal. Okay. Look, it's the tower. We will avoid pulling it. You can see it's on the bottom. No, literally moving kind of sort of in some sort of a normal flow of how things are flowing. So in terms of work, in terms of your husband, in terms of other work and things like that, they're pretty normal. And I don't know why I keep hearing you saying or fearing that something's going to come along and rock the boat. First of all, you know darn well you don't want to bring that on. Second of all, I don't see that happening. Not right now. I think you've taken a lot of time to adjust to things, not because it takes you a long time to adjust, but because everybody else had to kind of adjust around you. Now it's the sort of time for you to sit back and kind of enjoy the normalcy of it, if that makes sense. King of Swords in reverse. How interesting to pull a king in reverse for you, because the kings are the leaders, kings and queens, mainly the kings, because you know how it always used to be, right? King of Swords in reverse indicates a power-hungry, morally bankrupt, selfish, manipulative person. Well, I know that's not you. And nobody knows how to deal with a person like that better than you do. Not because you are one, but because you've eaten so many of them for lunch. You may not like to deal with them, but you know how to deal with them, if you know what I mean. One last thing. Don't ignore a nagging discomfort, pain, something like that, just because you don't have time for it right now. Okay. I'm not picking up on anything major or anything, but get it looked at. Don't fall back into old bad habits, basically. So that's what I have for you. Okay, I'm gonna take a little break and then come back and finish. Okay, home stretch. Moving on to Maddie. No planets in Virgo this week. We do still have Juno in Virgo in retrograde. So Juno is all about how we relate to others in retrograde. That can mean a couple of different things. One, it can feel like you're just not getting along with anybody, but it also can indicate that it's a good time to kind of sort of not focus on everybody else and focus on you, if that makes sense. It's gonna be hard sometimes. I think it's really hard for women, not that it's not hard for men, but we've just been bred to believe that we're selfish if we think of ourselves. And even though we don't live in that world anymore, it's still there. It's kind of weird. Um, the other thing is Mercury goes retrograde this weekend. It's a full Aries Mercury retrograde. And with that being said, that makes the likelihood of not getting along with everybody a lot more prevalent, because an Aries Mercury retrograde has the tendency to take those annoying things that people do and just blow them up to where you're just like, oh my God, I can't stand it if you do that one more time. Right. Like some people have those little pet peeves of, people eating loudly and things like that. And normally you can kind of sort of ignore it. During a Mercury retrograde, it's just impossible. It just gets under your skin. It's like everything, that people do just gets on your nerves. I kind of go through that. I think it's normal for us all to go through that. And I do believe that, being hormonal sometimes does have something to do with it. I definitely have a lot less patience, right before that time of the month with everybody than I do normally. I have a lot more normally. So, I tend to kind of hermit myself during those times that I feel that way. Not so much for everybody else's safety as I kind of take that as I need time for me. I need to be away from everybody. That's my clue that I just kind of need some separation space from everybody. And that can be difficult sometimes because, of course, those are the times when nobody wants to leave you alone. So I tend to just kind of, tell people, hey, I'm in a mood. Let me be in it over here by myself, and over time, kind of train the people around me to know what that means, really, really know what that means. Um, Trust me, they didn't in the beginning and they learned. And not in the, I had to beat it into them way or I had to be mean to them way, but I think where we make a mistake a lot of the times is we just don't say anything, and we expect people to get it and they don't, you know? And if we don't say something and just, put it point blank, I'm in a really crappy mood right now. I need to be left alone, to go through the motions of my crappy mood by myself. I'd rather you weren't a part of it. I don't think it's almost like people think it's rude to do that, but I think it's far more rude to just, make people figure it out on their own, if that makes sense. So that's one thing. Um, Aries Mercury retrograde can be pretty aggressive. Um, Definitely could bring up some aggressive communication, especially where there are issues within the communication of certain relationships. So the thing is that Mercury retrogrades, as much of a pain in the butt as they are, they do serve a purpose, and that purpose is to amplify problems, make them bigger, so that you can't ignore them anymore. So if you're in a communication pattern, let's say your mom, which is perfectly normal because we tend to do that. I mean, whenever my mom opens her mouth, I'm at a defensive reaction immediately, every single time, because I'm in this protection mode for myself, right? She's gonna ask something of me because that's what she always does. She doesn't talk unless she needs something. With that being said, if she decides to approach me and it's not asking for something, then I just kind of wasted all that energy getting angry for no reason, right? So instead, if you change your reaction to that, which means that if she approaches me to ask something, I don't have to get all about it, which is what I normally do. I can bypass that and explain it in a different way. And when I explain it in a different way, it might actually be taken and listened to than if I react in the normal way that I normally react, if that makes sense. Doesn't always work because my mother is the loophole lady. She'll try and get around it no matter what. I have a sneaking suspicion you and I might have something in common with that. But it does work at least temporarily until you have to find another way, if that makes sense. My mom has a Sagittarius rising, so the Knight of Cups is what I pulled for you. Strong, young, gallant man, I do believe. A gallant man. Marriage or proposal of an emotional nature? Wouldn't be surprised if you guys are talking about that, negotiating. Not saying anything good, bad, or indifferent about that situation. I don't know the boy, so I can't really form an opinion. Don't rush into anything if there's no need to. I'm just gonna put it that way. And that's what I have for you, darling. Love you. Moving on to Regina. No planets in Scorpio this week. Actually no influences whatsoever. Focuses on those you love. Hopefully your husband is doing better and doing okay and recovering well. Especially because we're entering into a Mercury retrograde this week, and it's a full Aries Mercury retrograde this week. And if you listen to the Scorpio horoscopes, it really is all about, I was kind of thinking about you when I was doing them, because it really is all about looking forward to spending time with those you love. And when you finally get it, it's just not what you were hoping for, not what you were expecting, and not necessarily in a good way. It's I can't tell you how many times, I don't see my kids, as often as I used to. And oh, I'm so glad we get to see all my kids. It's great, and they act like buttheads. And I'm like, what the hell did I do for? You know what I mean? It's such a bummer when that happens. But um there's a couple of things. One, I kind of see maybe a difference of opinion. Your wifely concern might have specific ideas, and his manly ego might have others, and they will clash with each other. Which is actually a pretty common occurrence in most marriages. One thing that I do know is I have a Libra husband too, and he gets really offended when I tell him what to do. I'm not necessarily trying to tell him what to do. To me, it's just very black and white. Either you go this route or you go this route. He takes that as me acting like his mother, which is not my intention. So, because we're in a Mercury retrograde, it's really important to think about what you say, how you say it, the energy behind it before you say it. Because if you can change the way that you approach it, it might actually be received in a different way. which might just make things easier for everybody. That's number one. Number two, my concern with you specifically, I think more than anybody here on the list, is that anger, the angry words, the temper tantrums. That's Aries to a T, is the temper tantrums. And it's like I'm really getting a lot of that around you. Not so much you having the temper tantrums, but a lot of them around you. And I don't think that your husband is really the only one that's having them. I think that there's an element to that, but I see them in various different locations around you. It's almost like I see you in the middle of a circle of people who are all having temper tantrums. And I don't necessarily see that they're all coming to you to deal with their problem as much as you're just kind of there everywhere you turn. That's what's happening. And so it's very important to create strong boundaries, have a very strong bubble around you. None of this is yours. And I think that this is one of those really good opportunities for you to, instead of taking it on and making it yours, to learn how to bubble that out. Just let people do what they're going to do, but not be affected by it, if that makes sense. It is a very awesome thing. Okay. I mean, I literally live and walk around and in my little bubble, it's pink and lavender because that's when I like. And I want everybody to stay the hell out of it because it's mine. And everybody, the whole world could be chaos around me, and I'm just in my little pink and lavender bubble, Highly recommend it. I mean, you should be in that bubble all day at work with all them crazy people that you got to deal with for sure. But the most important people to ground and bubble around are the ones that we're in closest emotional proximity with. And it was a hard lesson for me to really learn that that bubble was most important around my husband, especially when he was bus driving, not truck driving, but bus driving, because it was probably the worst job he ever had. I mean, the one that he hated the most, I think, because of the personalities that he had to deal with were just the worst of the worst of the town. And we lived in a pretty crappy town to boot. So it took that for me to realize that just because we're married doesn't mean that I need to share in whatever he was feeling. And that I could actually be more useful to him if I didn't share what he was feeling, if that makes sense. Hermit in reverse is what I'm choosing for you this time around. And the Hermit in reverse is sort of that the whole world is out to get me kind of a thing. And standing in the middle of a bunch of people having temper tantrums would definitely feel like that for sure, and make you want to run in and lock yourself in the house with all this. I see all the security locks and everything, and just that's what your bubble does. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to hide in the house or on your property or anything like that. The bubble does that. And when you feel your bubble waning, you bring it back up. I ground and bubble like 10 times a day. You just keep on doing it. Depending on how many people you encounter is how many times you need to ground and bubble. You can't overuse it. But I feel like I am driving this ground and bubble in for a reason, because it's really important for you to ground and bubble this week. Okay. Okay. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa, we have no planets in Scorpio this week. Focuses on those you love. And we are entering an Aries Mercury retrograde on Tuesday. So that is going to make everybody a little bit crazy, And being that you are the center of the world in terms of your own little family there, you probably may feel that everybody is going kind of crazy around you, and they're all bringing it to you. They're all bringing it to your doorstep. This is crazy, mom. Fix it. Help me fix it. Or, people coming up to you, just kind of sort of telling you their problems and then looking at you like, okay, what do I do about it? It's really crazy when they just stop asking and they just expect you to fix it, right? That drives me insane. And that's why I always ask them. And I just, okay, and are you asking me to do something about it, or are you just expecting me to do something about it? Because it's really, there's a big difference on whether or not I'm actually going to do something about it. And you could be pulling your hair out because it's just so crazy. So two things. One, I'm hearing this woman in spirit, and she says, remember, you're not the jackass whisperer. To me, that's something that actually my husband uses. And to me, what that means is that it's not your job to fix everybody's problems. And I feel like you're focused on your own challenges, and everybody's coming at you, and they all want you to drop what you're doing and fix their issue. And since they're all coming at you at once, there's also kind of a not a physical fight, like little kids are. No, I asked first. No, I asked first. I don't really see that as much as it just feels like everybody has the same drop what you're doing and focus on me right now. And there's always that straw that breaks the camel's back. That just makes you go, yeah. And I don't think you should do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't. Grounding and bubbling, grounding and bubbling, grounding and bubbling. And this is not just your family. Okay, we're moving into a Mercury retrograde. You travel a lot. Communication issues, it just seems to be kind of everywhere. Really important for you at the end of the day, I feel. End of the day, meditation. End of the day, release and unplug and let go. Rather than going to sleep with it constantly in your mind, because honestly, you're going to feel so much better and so much more well rested in the morning. Remember, worrying about anything isn't going to fix it. All you can do is be on top of what you can be on top of in the moment, if that makes sense. One last thing. I don't know. All I can say is this. When you feel like you're burning rubber all the time, which I think to me means you just constant go, 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 go. You got to remember to stop every now and then. And remember and don't let yourself get overbooked. The High Priestess. You know what I love about this card? Everything. She's magic. She has the ability to just wave her magic wand and fix things. And I think that this card coming through for you right now is really saying It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Things can be fixed like magic. And obsessing over them does not help. Then it's not being magically fixed. It's not a magic wand. One, you can always fall back on your guides for help, and they will help. And that is one of the ways things are magically fixed. Two, worrying about it doesn't do anything, but manifesting does. Putting the right energy and thought into something does. Number three, don't force things to work when for some reason they're not working. Walk away, do something else, refocus your energy. Almost every single time it works right off the bat. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Jillian, no planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on those you love. And we're entering a Mercury retrograde this week in Aries, which is a fire sign, which is an aggressive sign, which is all about aggressive communication patterns and really moving, escalating issues. You know how you just have some issues, some people that are just annoying to deal with. You kind of roll your eyes whenever you have to deal with them, and you just kind of sort of deal with them. During Mercury retrogrades, those relationships go. Oddly enough, the retrograde starts on your mom and Uncle Harrison's birthday. Oddly enough, it does start on the 2nd, on Tuesday. So it is of course important to be aware of that. And it blows up not because it's done. I think things need to blow up in order to get fixed. And so that's a lot of times why the things that take place during Mercury retrograde are so frustrating and annoying, because they're blowing up in order to fix it. And it could be less frustrating and annoying if you put the time into fixing it, but you're not fixing it for both of you, you're fixing it for you, if that makes sense. There's a big common misunderstanding with people that I'm willing to put the effort into fixing this, but I expect it from the other person. Well, expectation, you can have expectation all you want. Chances are you're going to get let down every single time. I mean, it's just how life is. It's the more expectations we have, the more letdowns we have. We can't fix another person. I can't fix my mom. I can't expect her to act in a different way. I can't expect her to change. She's not going to. She's at that stage in her life where she's not going to. One, because she can't. Two, because she's not going to. So in order for it to be healthy at all for me, it's what I do for me and how I approach it for me that matters. That means having healthy boundaries. It means not going to the store every single time I go over there twice a week to get her soda, which she does not need. because I don't want to be used in that capacity. I put very strong boundaries. The only thing you can't have delivered is cigarettes. That's the only thing I'm going to pick up for you once a month, only once a month. Make sure you have enough, because I'm not going more than once a month. And that's worked for a long time. Is she trying to go around the back door and try and get me to do more stuff? Of course she is. Of course she is. She's never going to change. And every single time it's a trigger and it pisses me off. But I bring myself back to, no, now that we are, we've identified that that's happening, we're going back to what I said before. This is all I'm willing to do for you until I have to change that, not you. So sometimes we just kind of sort of like, let things happen and hope that eventually it'll just go away. These will go away. They get worse. And during an Aries Mercury retrograde or fire Mercury retrograde period, which we're going to have 3 of them this year, that's the main character of the story. Is we are no longer settling for this behavior. We're putting an end or putting boundaries on this behavior, if this makes sense. The Knight of Wands in reverse is what I chose for you. Knight of Wands in reverse indicates delays, need for patience, and aggression. That is a Aries Mercury retrograde right there in tarot card form. Always going to be delays, always going to be aggressive stuff. It is what it is. I don't see you as a passive person anyways. You never really have been a passive person, which is fine. And you don't have to be overly aggressive either. I think that really it's all about creating a balance and, not letting people push your buttons anymore. Whether they know what buttons to push or not is irrelevant. The narcissistic flair exists everywhere, and they love to push those buttons to get a reaction out of you, to prove whatever their stupid, silly little point is. You can always and should always be above all of that petty bullshit, period. That's what I have for you, darling. And I know you can do it too. Moving on to Peg. It's the end of the coffee, but it's still really good. No planets in Sagittarius this week, except for the moon right at the beginning of the week. Probably, I would say, for a few hours on Easter Sunday. I don't know if you celebrate Easter or don't celebrate Easter. Happy celebrations if you do. Never mind if you don't, whatever. But we do have the moon in Sagittarius for the last just a few hours, I would say. I'm looking at noon on Sunday where it's there. I'm gonna say by 3. So okay, it's gonna take up the whole day for you. I'm saying it'll be out by 3. Okay, never mind. It's gonna take the whole day for you. Probably, maybe even sooner than 3, like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Out by the afternoon, still kind of the whole day for you. A couple of different things. First of all, the moon does move into a square with Neptune and Venus. And what's kind of interesting about this is that while the moon's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, the other 2 planets are focused on your career, and it's kind of a holiday. Just it's almost like it's blocking your creative flow career-wise. So maybe, for instance, you wake up in the morning and decide that I want to write today, and you just can't, right? You're just sitting there and nothing is coming to you. But the moon's in a trine with Mercury right before it goes retrograde. So it's going retrograde 2 days after that, which is also focused on career. Mercury is more of a logical get her done kind of an energy. It's all about ideas, and it's about how to, implementing solid plans, business plans, things like that. So I feel like, to me, one counterbalances the other one. If you can't seem to use the creative side, then go for the non-creative side, the more physical side of things. What most of us would call the boring parts of things. And I think a lot of times our creativity is stifled because we're ignoring things that need to get done, right? Like taxes, for example. I can't sit down and have a good creative flow in my writing if I've got something like that looming over my head. And so I feel like that really has a lot to do with it. If you've been putting it off, you just got to stop putting it off and get it done. Bite the bullet and get it done. Right, you live and do it. And then you are freeing up space to allow that creativity to flow again, if that makes sense. Once the moon moves out of there for the rest of the week, there is no other influence, but Mercury is going retrograde on Tuesday. So while there's no planets interacting with it, we have to deal with it nonetheless, because it's just kind of there, right? And it's around us, and everybody around us is going to be reacting to it. And, it is what it is. We still have Pallas Athene, but Pallas Athene continues to be retrograde. So it's actually a perfect time for Pallas Athene to be retrograde. Sagittarians are normally fighters to begin with. Pallas Athene is kind of an aggressive energy, but saying we're not going to be aggressors this time during the Mercury retrograde. So I think honestly, this helps you to not be so triggered by everything that's going on. And instead, nose to the grind and focus on what you need to focus on, rather than getting sucked into the drama that's going on around you, if that makes sense. And I'm not seeing like a ton of drama going on around you, but it is here and there. And normally you would stay out of it. I think I know you pretty well enough to know that you would normally stay out of it. But I think it's an amplified people trying to suck you into it. And I don't think this is just work either. I think that there's other influences about this, whether they come from family or they come from personal circles or something. It's just, to be honest with you, one of the things that I have learned in the last 15 years of being this way that we are, we always seem to be the one in the middle of all the craziness going on. It can be very easy to get sucked into it. It can be very easy to get overwhelmed by it. I mean, just look at how we react to what's going on in the world in general, not just what's going on around us personally. And that's why we have to work harder. We have to meditate more. We have to grind and bubble more. We have to work harder to keep ourselves above all that and not get sucked into it, because the chaos is around us. It's not, we're not partaking in it, if that makes sense. The Magician in reverse. How very, very interesting. Caution is needed now, for in real life, the Magnus could show himself as a confidence trickster. I love how that is written. A confidence trickster. To me, it's the Magician, okay? The Magician wouldn't normally seem like he's not confident. He's confident that he knows that his magic is going to work, right? The minute we second guess it, that's when we start running into problems. So I feel like this is where we are just like everybody else. When you start thinking about, oh my God, can I do this? They're asking me to do something and I don't know if I can do it. Oh my God, what if I fail miserably? That's only going to freak you out more, and it's not going to be helpful. So you definitely want to avoid that as much as possible. And it's going to start coming up. It's going to creep into your head. I'm so sorry. Because that's how it works. And you just got to go, hey, we can't do this right now. And sort of veer away from it. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Mama Sherri, we have the moon in Sagittarius right at the beginning of the week. Just most of Sunday, by Sunday evening, it sort of moves on. What's interesting about it is it does move into a square with Neptune and Venus, both of which are very creative influences towards your career. And that's a challenge. It's like you can't use your creativity to come up with new ideas. However, the moon's in a trine with Mercury 2 days before it goes retrograde, mind you, which is a positive aspect where the moon and Mercury are working together and they're focused on career. Mercury is a more solid, more logical, more let's put business practices into our business in order to be successful, rather than coming up with creative, airy-fairy ideas, which is funny because this is totally the antithesis of what Sagittarius would normally do. But it makes perfect sense because we need both sides in order to run something efficiently. And I have to say that that's not easy to do in a business like ours, honestly. There's a lot of airy-fairy, and a lot of business practices don't necessarily work with what we do, but that doesn't mean that we can't change them to work for us instead, if that makes sense. Once the moon is out of there, there's really not a whole lot to influence anything. We do have Pallas Athene in retrograde still, continuing to focus first on your day-to-day schedule, moving that focus into those you love. And Pallas Athene's warrior mentality is kind of cooled down because it's retrograde. So we're not necessarily fighting anything, which is good because with Mercury going retrograde in Aries, everybody's fighting around us. So that's actually a good thing. It's like for once, Sagittarius isn't the problem, if that makes sense. Not that Sagittarius is ever a problem, but for many Sagittarians who like to watch the drama unfold around them, they don't even have to stir the pot. It's going to happen, right? Obviously, you know, pardon me, not to get sucked into drama and stupid things that have nothing to do with you, things that suck up and waste time. Obviously, you know that. But I do have to say that it is very important that there may be a situation that might be easy to get sucked into unknowingly, almost like you walk right into it. So I just want to say that keep your eyes open and your ears open, because we will be we will be reminding you and you will want to listen. That's what your mother is saying. Yeah. You'll know what this is when it happens. The other thing is, I really get this strong sense that somebody is going to resurface, but it's not going to be a pleasant resurfacing. I think your first initial reaction is going to be, oh, no, 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 no. But then I get that you would also give them another chance. I still think nothing has changed. I hate to say it, but I still think nothing has changed. But it is good that you gave them another chance with some stronger boundaries, of course. Eight of Cups is the card that I pulled for you. In reverse. Unable to make a firm commitment due to insecurities, fear of becoming too close, must learn to trust again and strive to achieve goals and recognition. Very interesting. Sometimes Mercury retrogrades, and being that it's in a fire sign, which is eventually going to be a Sagittarius Mercury retrograde also. That's what that means, anyways, later on during Sagittarius time. But you know, I really feel there's more to things that have happened than just what happened on the surface, what we know. There's other underlying things too. And I think the bottom line here is that I I really get the sense of licking your wounds. And I'm not saying, all right, that's it, time's up. I would never do that. But what I am saying is that there's a part of you that knows that you can get back to who you were before my dad passed. But there's a part of you that doesn't want to believe that too at the same time. And the latter is still winning. It's still in the driver's seat. And it's up to you to switch who's driving the car, if that makes sense. That's what I have for you. That's it. I'm done. That's what I have for everybody. Happy first week of the Mercury retrograde. I'm so looking forward to how that's going to play out. You have no idea. You guys know who I am, obviously. I will see you guys next week. Make it a great week, as always. I'll see you next week.